Well, good morning, and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I'm your host, Mark Mitchell, a preaching minister here at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined, as always, by Steve Fox, a minister for over 50-some years. I'm just going generic.
Started when I was 2.
Yeah, I know you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You doing okay?
I'm doing well.
We live in a messed up world, don't we? I thought about driving over here. I went to a basketball game Friday night, and it was just great when South Charleston plays GW. And the place was rocking. You know, there were like 1,100 people in that gym. The place was just rocking. And then I thought, look at all these innocent men and women and children are being killed by a moron over there in Russia that thinks the best way for him to get more important is to seize more land and kill more people. And I was wondering, you know, how come we're immune from that? How come we can go to a basketball game and sit there and cheer, and then halfway across the world there's people just dying because somebody's not. I think there's a, well, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say I think there's a special place in hell for people who kill children, innocent children, but I'm not going to say that because I don't have any biblical proof of that. But I could maybe throw some.
Well, there is a couple instances.
Some verses together.
There's a couple instances in the Bible where it speaks to the degrees of heaven.
Few stripes and many stripes.
And there are some, few little comments that are made toward the idea of certain actions will get certain results.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know that a lot of people, including our audience, is very concerned about it, and who wouldn't be? Your heart goes out for those people in Ukraine. Your heart even goes out to some of the Russian soldiers who just don't want to do. I mean, they've already had some revolts.
Look how our nation went through that when all the hot shots and guys up upper echelon said, we're going to go to Vietnam and fight. And so they were sent over there and had no idea what they were fighting for, had no idea how long they were going to be there. And yeah, you're right. Most of the Russians don't even want him doing that.
No.
I'm shocked that there hasn't been some kind of conspiracy to go after him. But
well,
we'll have to wait until they ask us to speak at the United Nations, and then we can tell them how to figure it out.
It is, I think, not that I'm ever happy to see this form of brutality going on that can go on in our world, but at the same time, sometimes we live our lives in small little bubbles, and we just think there is no evil. Evil exists. Evil is, and we are not immune to it. And sometimes we look at the world and think, well, we're in utopia, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel very safe and secure because in the 3rd grade, Mrs. Decker taught my class that if they use the atomic bomb,
jump under your desk.
Get under your desk. So I've been working.
You got some melamine around your place?
Some what?
Melamine?
No, I don't know what that is.
Well, that's what used to be the sort of like they had that plastic coated wood over top of the desks, and so I'm just, of course, it could have been some wood desks.
I don't know. That's the first time in this program that we've done it for months and months that you used the word. I bet you have a plethora of those words, don't you?
I got a couple.
Okay. Would you like to read scripture for us?
I can do that.
What we're going to study today is bits and pieces. It should not surprise us that during the ministry of Jesus, different people who listened to him had different consequences and different ideas in their mind. They looked at him in different ways. They didn't all respond the same way. Now, if they had all responded the same way, John the Baptist would have told them exactly, this is what I want you to do in response to Jesus, and I'll be here with you when you do that. But they're kind of left on their own with the message of John the Baptist and the message that there's somebody else coming that they're supposed to look for. Mark says they responded in different ways. And what I'd like to do this morning for a little bit, and as you know, sometimes we take a little bit and turn it into 2 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. But these are passages that will explain to us what Mark's vision was and what his book says and describes these people who had different responses. And then we'll compare that to people today who hear the gospel story and have different responses as well.
So you want me to read from John 3, beginning with verse 13 down through 19?
No.
Okay.
I want you to begin with Mark.
Oh, well, okay, Mark.
You know how to spell that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Mark 3, 7 through 12. And as Mark reads it, please look for the response that people gave Jesus.
Okay. Jesus withdrew his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. When they heard about all he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan and around Tyre and Sidon. Because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him to keep the people from crowding him, for he had healed many, so that those with diseases were pushing forward to touch him. But if the impure spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." But he gave them strict orders not to tell others about him.
We were talking about what did Billy Joe McAllister throw off the Tallahatchie Bridge, and then we remembered that we did that last week. We already knew what he threw off the bridge.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to look at a passage. We noted one passage last week, and now we're going to look at 3 more that Mark says this is how they responded to Jesus. And Mark is going to read for us from Mark, chapter 3, 13 through 19.
Yeah. Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter; James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name, Boanerges,
Boanerges,
which means sons of thunder.
That's close.
Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him.
Okay, how many names did you read?
Well, counting Jesus, 13.
Counting Jesus, you read 13. So each of these 12 men who are appointed apostles, and that's why it says Jesus went into the wilderness. He prayed about who he was going to choose. And we could get into a long discussion about was that predetermined or not that he chose certain people, but we would take that on another occasion.
Well, I mean,
Just say yes and we'll go on.
Yes.
How did these people respond to Jesus? Well, in the case of all 12 of them, they heard a similar message. He's taken them aside, he's teaching publicly, and then he's taken them aside and choosing certain ones. But in each of those cases of those 12, they had to make a decision about what they were going to do.
Well,
For example, Matthew, Jesus says, "Come and follow me." He closes up his tax forms and his tax tablets and says, "Okay, I'm giving this.
I'm out of here.
I'm going."
Yeah.
And some of them were fishermen who said, "We're not going to fish anymore. We're just going to walk around and listen to him." So they're responding to the message of Jesus. And do you see anything else in that paragraph that says anything about their decisions?
No. Well, I mean, of course, Mark lays a couple details down that lets us know that some of them one of them ended up changing their minds. But no, these are people that Jesus chose and they accepted as to be part of the inner circle, because we know that when Jesus showed up, it wasn't just always the 12. I mean, there was huge crowds.
Yeah.
I mean, because one time he sends out 72, and then we know there was a lot of ladies that followed in amongst this group to I guess to help these men live on the road, because some of us can't make it on the road
Buy
without
supplies and get some food for them.
Yeah, prepare food, cook, do whatever they got to do.
Maybe
it was a large group, but the emphasis, if you want to take a look at the emphasis, there are times in your life where when you step up like these 12 did, it's probably going to cost you something.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that for these 12, primarily these 11, it cost them everything.
Matthew just gets up, walks away, and I always wonder what people mean when they say this, and he never looked back. Well, he probably did look back every once in a while.
Yeah, wondered, hey.
I know what they mean when they say that, but
yeah.
There's a lot of men here in this list who are giving up everything they own, their job, their family, to go follow him for 3 years.
Well, we know that on Friday night and Saturday of a particular weekend, they no doubt were questioning their decisions. I mean, some of them were just ready to pack up and head out.
And in that context, Peter is so worried about this, he's hiding.
Yeah.
He's kind of looking around the corner. Let's see.
I done cut one soldier's ear off.
I'm going to.
They'll find me in the corner, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and let's read our second little section here.
Okay.
Verses 20 through 21.
20 and 21.
Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, "He is out of his mind."
What a great passage.
You know, at any moment in time that you think even Jesus had family that didn't understand him, they just were convinced he was out of his mind. Who is he to go around and tell people he is the Messiah? We know him.
Mm-hmm. We grew up with him.
He's nothing more special.
Yeah, he's
than us.
Cousin that we used to play ball with. Well,
in this case, it is his family, because we have another story where his brothers and sisters came and said,
what's the phrase that Mark uses to describe him here? The family said what?
He's out of his mind.
Yeah.
They went to take charge of him.
The Revised Standard says he's beside himself.
Yeah.
I like he's out of his mind a little bit better. I mean, you could hang your hat on that.
Well,
most of us know.
Two connotations here. They went to take charge of him. Charge of him, you would be a figurative way of saying we're about to get him committed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he's talking out of his mind.
He's an embarrassment.
And he's embarrassing us as a family. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot to begin with, but now we got less than we had before.
And when his friends heard it, they went out to seize him, for they said he is beside himself. I like your translation better, because in my family, there would have been a lot more people said he's out of his mind. I never heard he's beside himself very much.
Well, it used to be a connotation. You know, there's two of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the crazy one's talking.
Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I.
So am I.
Yeah. And that's what they thought. They thought he was mentally ill. And we got to stop him. We got to do something so he doesn't embarrass us all the time.
Well, again, the Jewish culture was very much in status and in birthrights and whose family you descended from. Not unlike we live today. We live in a world that is constantly elevating its status to let people know who we are and and the last thing you want to do is have someone who demeans your position. Much like the Pharisee who sees Jesus letting that woman kiss his feet and rub her hair on him. I mean, he's like, he can't be a prophet. No decent prophet would let that happen.
He's missed that by a mile. He's probably out of his mind.
Yeah, he's probably out of his mind.
There's one more verse in chapter 3 that says in 31, and his mother and his brothers came, and they standing outside, they sent to him and called him. Now, there's another response. Mary is with Jesus' brothers, and they're not named here, but they're named in some other passages. Mary's with Jesus' brothers, and she's saying, she knows what's going on. She knows a whole lot more than all the rest of them do, because from the time of the conception in the first part of the gospel, she's aware of what she has carried in her womb. And this is somebody different. So she made a response too.
Yeah, you have to, and I'm sure that part of Jesus's humanity would have probably been a little bit disappointed with Mom, thinking, of what she knows and understands. She is siding with my brothers on this one.
The brothers probably went there to again try to talk him out of, don't embarrass the family anymore. You are out of your mind, so just stay away from crowds and people.
Well, we left out a little thing that went on in between this saying, because it does, given the context of, I'll go ahead, because I know we're going to read this, so let's just go ahead and read it, 22 through 30. So Jesus called them. This is after his, 22, yeah.
Yep, 3:20.
This is right after the family, he's out of his mind. And the teachers of the law who came down from Jerusalem said, he is possessed by Beelzebub, by the prince of demons. He is driving out demons. So Jesus called them over to him and began to speak to them in parables. How can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan opposes himself and is divided, he cannot stand. His end has come. In fact, no one can enter a strong man's house without first tying him up. Then he can plunder the strong man's house. Truly I tell you, people can be forgiven all their sins and every slander they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. They are guilty of an eternal sin. He said this because they were saying he has an impure spirit. Then we have Jesus' mother showing up after Jesus confronted the Pharisees and told them not only did their basis of their facts and truth they were using as a illustration was so inaccurate. I mean, Jesus told them, how can one oppose his own self? I mean that's ridiculous.
Well, that's where Abraham Lincoln got that during the Civil War.
Yeah.
House divided itself, north and south. Doesn't work.
Yeah, something has to be resolved, or it's one of my favorite truths at the end of the movie Lincoln, where he says, this proclamation, the 13th Amendment, has to be settled. He said, because if we don't settle this, we will constantly be divided.
Well, and that sounds like something Jesus said in the next paragraph.
Yeah. So you have the idea that the concept that Jesus lays before them. Jesus is not a puppet to Satan. Jesus is in complete opposition to Satan, and then of course his attack on the Pharisees would have been. Our problem is we've grown up for generations upon generations thinking that Pharisees was a bad character, but when this was going on, it would be like you running into the representatives, House of Representatives people. They had that kind of power. They had that kind of clout, esteem. I mean, when people walked by them, it was sort of like walking by part of the mafia. Godfather, stick your ring out there and let him kiss it.
It's like you and me walking through the mall. And people just stop and so.
No, they're more likely to say, this thing that Jesus dealt with earlier, he's out of his mind.
Oh, that's what I meant. People would be pointing, going, they're out of their minds.
Yeah. Yep. So their response to Jesus's proclamation and his opposition to the establishment got the mothers and the brothers to a level of fear that they wanted to stop him.
I read a book one time. I think it was Randy Harris, so if it wasn't Randy Harris, I apologize to whoever it was. He said there was one person at the cross who knew 100% that Jesus was who he said he was. You know who that was?
Well, Jesus.
No.
Mary?
Mary.
Well, evidently Mary
She had
struggled.
no doubts whatsoever.
Well, but she still struggled with it. She still we have instances where right here's one of them. Her opposition, she doesn't necessarily like the way he's going about it, that's for sure. So
Okay.
I mean,
No, I think you would be hard pressed to find any scripture or any paragraphs where the New Testament says Mary had some doubts. It was kind of like the opposite of that would be John the Baptist in prison saying, "Are you the one we're supposed to be looking for, or is there somebody else coming after you?"
well, I'm not saying she didn't know that he was the Son of God. My issue is she didn't always like the way he was handling it.
And she didn't know how it was all going to play out either.
No, and that's the doubts you and I, as humans, deal with. I mean, I think you could ask up a lot of believers: do they believe yet Jesus is the Son of God? Yeah, but let's say you're called to do this. Well, now wait a second. I don't know if I approve of that. Mm-hmm. I know he's God, but I need to have a talk with him. I want to interrupt the meeting. I want to be like Mary here, bring my family with me. Let's interrupt the meeting and say, I know who you are, but I don't think this is the way to go about it. And that's kind of hard sometimes, that we get to that kind of level.
We have looked at 4 passages where people responded to Jesus. The vast majority of people, and I don't know how this happens, and I don't know how you read people's hearts or put them in situations where you want the advantage to be in their life. But the vast majority of people that heard Jesus teach did not accept what he was teaching or did not accept who he was.
Well,
I don't have a figure. I don't know, 50% of the people in Galilee liked him and 50% didn't. I don't have a figure, but it looks as though there are more people who were very doubtful about what he was talking about. Well, even when his own family says, "What are we going to do with this guy? He's out of his mind."
Well,
so you and I shouldn't feel too bad when people in the church say, "You know what?
Yeah, they're not.
You guys are out of your mind."
We're in pretty good company. Well, I know that Jesus pushed people in a direction they were never, ever comfortable to deal with. And oftentimes, and I've shared this from the pulpit many, many times, we generally want the God that we like, not the God who's God. And God shows up in the form of Jesus and begins being God on earth and demonstrating it in a way, they were without a doubt recognizing the fact that he was totally different than anything they'd ever seen.
Yeah.
That part was absolute true. Even the people that didn't follow him knew he was something.
Well, the soldiers even came back and said, we've never heard anybody speak like that.
Well, around the soldiers around the cross, truly this was the Son of God. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, it was obvious in one instance. The problem that comes with it is the problem that has plagued human nature all along. We know, either we know or we want to know the truth of God. The problem is when it conflicts with what we want. That's where the rub hits.
Yeah.
Because then you have to make a decision. Okay, his way is, as John put it, I will have to decrease and he will have to increase.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most powerful, really appropriate understanding of what it means when you make Jesus part of your life.
I think that whole situation comes down to John the Baptist saying, he can do this better than I can.
Yeah.
Jesus even said, of all people born into the world, John the Baptist, nobody was like him.
None.
And then he says, but
even he's
going to increase and I will decrease.
Wow.
The spotlight will be taken from me and will be put on him.
And it's even,
some people wouldn't like that.
No, and it's even also this too, that the fact that he recognized, maybe not just in the element of out there in the crowd, but even he, I think, that was one of those double statements. It rings true to, okay, now Jesus is going to take center stage. But it also rings true that Jesus should take center stage in everyone's life. I should decrease and Jesus should increase in my life, not vice versa.
And then in prison, he had some doubts.
He had some doubts too.
So when I have some doubts like that, we're in pretty good company. That John the Baptist had some questions, had some problems too that he had to deal with.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doubting. In fact, I honestly believe, I believe this wholeheartedly, that when you begin to question things, I think it's a good place to be.
This isn't in our text, but doubting Thomas always gets a bad rap.
Absolutely.
He doubts because he says, I'm not going to believe it till I see it. What's wrong with that? I mean, in any trial in the United States, if somebody said, I'm not going to believe it till I see it, it would be complimented for that. And Thomas, and I've heard sermons, well, Thomas didn't go to church that week, so he missed a whole week, so he didn't get to find out until 7 days later. Well, I don't know exactly how the chronology went, how the time capsule went, but I don't see him as being somebody it's just awful that he doubted Jesus. I mean, they gave him the name
Doubting Thomas, and it's an unfair rap because I can guarantee you, every follower of Jesus Christ has had not just one, multiple moments in their life where they've thought, God, are you sure you know what you're doing?
5 of them this morning.
Yeah. Just watch news now, and I'm sure there are. If you're not doubting now, I don't know.
You can say the same thing about Peter when they were out in the boat.
Yeah.
He gets all kinds of negative stuff because he took his eyes off Jesus and started to drown. Well, you read the text. He's the only guy in the boat.
Got out of the boat.
He's the only guy that's walking on water with Jesus. Nobody else said, "Hey, let's go follow him."
Yeah. Hey, let's try.
Do you know where the stumps are? I don't know where the stumps are. Well, we are going to finish. Is that okay, time-wise?
Yes.
We are going to finish with one I think is the most curious. If we're quick. And this is important. We'll just kind of hit it, and then you can compare the next things that we're going to study with the verse that we're going to have you look at. Mark, you want to read?
Mark 4, verse 10 through 13. When he was alone, the 12 and the others around him asked him about the parables. He told them, "The secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but to those on the outside, everything is said in parables, so that they may be ever seeing but never perceiving, or ever hearing but never understanding. Otherwise they might turn and be forgiven." Then Jesus said to them, "Don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand any parable?"
Is that amazing?
Yeah.
The tough part for me is when Jesus says, the reason I speak in parables because I think there's some people that might see what I'm saying, and indeed it might be that they perceive my message, and I don't want them understanding that. So we're going to talk in parables. Boy, that's a tough passage.
I've often wondered to the extent, could there be even a more, not plausible, but an even more underlying truth that Jesus is bringing up? It's sort of like, and I know you know this, you can go up preach a sermon, and somebody will come up to you and say, "Boy, I really like that sermon," and they'll say about such and such and such, and you're thinking to yourself, "Did I even talk about that? I don't remember saying anything about that." But in the way people's minds work, they can hear something and attach it to something that they feel very strongly about. Let's say somebody gets up and says something against so and so. Well, if they're against so and so, that's what they heard. Whereas someone else in the audience may not have heard that exactly like.
You mean like Trump and Clinton? You mean kind of like that?
Yeah,
they heard what they wanted to hear.
They hear what they want to hear
all the time.
Jesus is telling them that in these parables, there's a secret thing, but you actually have to be listening to hear it. You really have to be listening to hear it. You have to be thinking to yourself, "I want to know the truth of God." And that was the one thing from the beginning of Isaiah when he wrote that very first time, "They will be ever hearing but never hearing, seeing but not understanding." So because he told them their eyes weren't on him. There's one place where I think he says the only thing they think about is filling their bellies and getting more stuff.
And I think, in connection with what you just said, I think this is a passage that says there is the providence of God, but there's also the free will of man.
That's right.
And how you put those two things together is, a pretty difficult concept in the Old Testament as well in the New Testament. But a lot of people just probably jump over this or just read it and don't understand it. And he said, "Do you not understand this parable?" The parable about what? The seeds. The sower and the seeds. "Do you not understand this parable?"
How will you understand anything else?
"How then will you understand all the parables?" Jesus said this was important. If you're taking arithmetic and next week you start calculus, you're going to be in trouble.
Unless you understand arithmetic.
If you're taking, well, there's only three kinds of people in the world, you know that. Those who are good at math and those who aren't. If you're taking arithmetic and then the next week you try to jump into plane geometry or solid geometry, you jump into calculus, you're not going to make it. You have to advance and so he said, this is where we start. We start with this parable. And Jesus makes it very clear, do you not understand this parable? Because if you don't understand this one, you won't understand the rest of them. If you're trying to take calculus and you haven't even passed arithmetic, you're not going to make it. So you better grab a hold of this parable and see what it says and make that a part of your message.
It also draws attention to the fact that the way from then on out, it forced the disciples to begin to listen in a different way. Mm-hmm. Even though We have the moment just before the ascension where Peter and the apostles ask, okay, are you going to set the kingdom up? They still didn't have it yet. They still didn't get it. And of course, Jesus didn't even bother. Like, the hour and time is none of your business.
There are several passages in the New Testament, most of them at the end of the Gospels, that say certain people, including the apostles and other people too who are part of his ministry, they didn't understand this saying until after the resurrection.
That's right.
Until after he was raised from the dead. Then it made sense.
But you can even take that further too. They still didn't grasp it until the day of Pentecost. And then, when the Holy Spirit showed up and started working through these followers of Jesus Christ and demonstrating a power that was available to those men, and not only the power, but primarily the truth and reality that they were demonstrating and displaying, they turned the world upside down because of that.
I don't think we understand how much of a transition was being made here with John the Baptist ministry and with Jesus' ministry, because things were changing like crazy. Every time you turned around, something was different.
We have, in our society, have had tremendous changes in the last, I'm just going to say, since I've been alive in the last 60 years. In 1960, it was black and white TV and one cars, and most towns had one or two diners, restaurants. Most families cooked their meals at home. That we didn't have big grocery stores. There were grocery stores, but most of the time they were just small little places on the corner. Our world has progressed in a way that for a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who thinks, I love some of the advancements we've had in technology and things that we can do now, but at the same time we've traded some values that we've lost. In Jesus' transitioning there, he's transitioning people from one perspective to another, and it's always uncomfortable when you lose something that you hold on to that's important to you. And the Jews were about ready to give up a lot of their traditions that they held on to and that's the reason the book of Acts is such an important study, is the fact that even as today, followers of Jesus Christ, sometimes we bring what our grandparents believed into our faith, and more than not, we need to take a look at, as what was it, Sean said yesterday, you can't have your grandfather's faith anymore, you have to have your own. Yeah.
And part of me deals with that all the time, where
yes,
like when I write something to give to you, some passages to give to you that we're going to study, or I have this New Testament in my hand, I don't own a computer, so I don't sit down and make a sermon outline or class outline just sitting there like that. I have to have some paper and a pen because that's a part of me, and I can't I don't want to get rid of it. I just feel more comfortable that way.
Well, that's fine.
And there are a lot of people who have such a difficult time changing, including me.
Well, we all do.
Where even people in your own family will look at me and go, "You're out of your mind." Oh, wait a minute, that's another subject.
Well, the one truth is, Steve, if you and I both live the life that looks like Jesus, we will be accused of being out of our minds.
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Because nobody does what Jesus does without being accused of that, because it's contrary to every truth our society holds up.
And I don't know what the figure is here, but I'm guessing half of the Sermon on the Mount was Jesus saying, Moses said this to you, but I say this to you.
Yeah.
The law says this to you, but I say this to you. He was asking them to make some pretty radical changes.
Well, he was asking them, like he told his disciples, to understand something you couldn't see. Mm-hmm. This has been the truth all along, but you couldn't see it. That's why I'm here.
And if you don't understand that first highlighted principle and highlighted parable, you won't understand anything.
Nope.
So you better dig down and get rooted in that one parable, because that's where it starts.
Yes. Well, Steve, that's pretty much going to do it for this week. And
I want to take that back. I don't think you're out of your mind.
Okay. I'm glad to hear it. I'm not taking my mind back. So if you can, join us next week. We will be studying in 1 Corinthians 2 beginning next week. So if you want to study that, and John chapter 15, both passages will be on our text for next week.
I wanted to add one more thing.
All right.
I got new glasses last week. And,
Really?
And one of my grandsons came in the house last week, right the day I got them, and said, "Man, Papa, you look so much more intelligent with those glasses."
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back and look at what I said today to see if that made any difference whatsoever. If I'm more intelligent than I was before.
Well, the rest of your family is out there, outside the room. He's beside himself.
Gage was beside himself, and I was out of my mind. So it worked out. Okay.
All right. And on behalf of Steve and I, we wish you a blessed week. Keep praying for those in Ukraine, and pray for our nation. And we pray that God will deliver us out of this conflict that's going on. Not our conflict, but deliver the people of Ukraine. You going to wave bye?
And this week, use an appointed time to help somebody who's out of their mind.